Welcome back once again, Caustic Man. By the time this video airs, it'll be 2021. Happy New Year to all of you. Hope there are a lot of great things to come for you. So I got something pretty cool for you to look at this time. It's the Islander automatic dress watch from longislandwatch.com. You guys know how this is gonna go. No wrist check, no BS, just in depth with this watch in 10 minutes or less. So this is the Islander automatic dress watch. Mark is calling this dial the white pinstripe dial. Let's get into the specifications. So this is powered by an NH36 automatic movement. You guys know that's a Seiko movement. Hand winding, hacking, vibrating at 21,600 vibrations per hour. And of course you can see there it has a date complication. On my calipers, the case diameter is measuring it at 38.9 millimeters. Case height at 11.7, lug to lug at 44.9, and the lug width is 20 millimeters. So this is a sapphire crystal on this watch. As you can see, it's got anti-reflective coating and plenty of it. It does a pretty good job of mitigating the glare from the studio lights here. There is a display back case displaying that NH36 movement that's also sapphire on the back. Interesting thing about this as a dress watch, it actually has 100 meters of water resistance, and that's partially owing to this screw down crown. Very unusual to see a screw down crown on a dress watch, but you know, Mark's an enthusiast. He makes watches for watch people, so not surprising to see him add something like that. So since it is a screw down crown, let's see how it screws back into place. Relatively smooth, not really binding there, no problems at all. So this is a fully polished case. It's polished on all sides to a high shine, signed crown. There aren't really any chamfered edges on this, pretty straight edges, pretty simple, straightforward finishing on this watch. Capable though. This comes on a black croco calf embossed strap. It's got this interesting butterfly deployant clasp. I'll show you how that works. Very simple, actually. It's got this little nub here. You slide the strap into there, find the sizing index that you want, slide that up into the index, snaps into place, and closes like so. And to release, 2 tabs on the side, and the locking mechanism just pops right back open. Really nicely done clasp here. It's solid. It appears really sturdy. You can see some kind of jeweled finishing there. Not a bad looking clasp at all. I know sometimes these things are a bit of an afterthought. Not in this case. This is very cool. Not a signed clasp at all. Mark explains why he did that. I think he said that it might have been a little bit too much on there. And I could take it or leave it myself, but it is a plain clasp. So going back to the case here for a second, you can see that the bezel is raised off of the rest of the case a little bit. Kind of gives it a little bit more of a chunky look to it. The lugs are quite angular. They're downturned, but they've got an interesting angularity to them. You can see the lugs are angled inward quite nicely here. Very elegant look to it. And despite the fact that this is a 39 millimeter case diameter, the inward turned lugs do give it kind of a sleek, very slim appearance. Okay, so let's go in depth on this dial. You can see the sort of plank texturing there. That's the pinstripe on the dial. I think that's a pretty nice touch. It's got some Seiko vibes to it, especially with those stick indices you see here with matched with the Dauphine hands. That handset is blued. You can see it pretty well in the light here. I can't imagine that these are heat blued or chemical blued at this price. They've got to be painted, but they look pretty cool. You can see that the angled nature of the hands is playing off of the light quite well. Some people complain that Dauphine style hands are a little bit difficult to see, but in this case, because the handset is so contrasting with that white dial, I think it works really nicely. You do have those angled, polished stick indexes there, heavy Seiko vibes on that. Train track minute markers around the edge. Chapter ring is angled down toward the dial, kind of gives it a nice dimensional effect there. Nice polished silver indices. and they catch the light really nicely. It definitely gives it kind of a cool effect when matched with the Dauphine hands and how this plays in the light. That's a framed date window at the 3 o'clock position. Quite nicely done on that. Now, something interesting about this dial, if you look up close, you see the company logo at the 12 o'clock and the scrawling down by the 6 o'clock. They do have a dimension to them, but what it looks like is it's actually molded into the dial, so it's not applied, but it does have a 3D effect to it. So overall on this dial, very tastefully done, very simple. This is more of a dress watch. I think Mark refers to this as kind of an everyday watch, but for me it does lean a little bit more dressy rather than everyday, despite the screw down crown and the water resistance. The dial texture is very interesting, and not just because of the sort of plank texture to it. It's almost got a very slight shimmer to it. It's textured beyond just those pinstripe lines in it. It's extremely subtle, but very interesting nonetheless. I do find myself wishing that the train track minute markers were a little bit more subtle. I think they stand out a little too much for a dial like this, although that's personal preference. Maybe you disagree on that one. And the company logo at the 12 o'clock position, I don't know if I like that on a watch like this. It seems a little inelegant, especially given the rest of the aesthetics of this watch. Maybe I would have just liked to have seen Islander watch on there or something like that. But as I look at this dial, I can't help but feel that the proportions are a little bit off. It feels like there's too much dead space on this dial. I find myself wishing that either the indices were a little bit larger or the dial face was a little bit smaller. Yeah, so I could see this as an everyday watch if you're the kind of guy who wears a button-down shirt and chinos. Maybe not so much if you're a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy, but I mean, who knows? Maybe you can pull this off. Okay, so here's a look at this watch on the wrist. Something kind of cool about it, it actually sizes down for my 6-inch wrist. So if you've got a smaller wrist, this strap is going to size down just fine for you. I am at the last sizing index, so it's probably not going to be sized for anything a whole lot smaller than me, but in case you have a small wrist, you can play well with this watch. And for you larger wristed folks, plenty of adjustment space there. I think I would have preferred it a little bit smaller for a dress watch like this. I mean, look, I'm a small-wristed guy. I'm going to err on that side of things. This is probably going to be a perfect size for most of you, though. That case height sits pretty well. It doesn't seem intrusive at all. I think it's just fine proportionally, even on a smaller wrist like mine. Those downturn lugs hug the wrist nicely. Only a 45mm lug-to-lug width, like I mentioned, and those downturn lugs make that even more wearable. So the strap for me is not perfect, as cool as it is with that butterfly strap. I think you can kind of see the little button there that deploys it. It actually kind of digs into my skin a little when I've been wearing it for a while. Slightly uncomfortable. Maybe it's just because I've got bony wrists and that just does that to me. But if it were me, as cool as this strap is, I think after a while I'd have to change it out. Okay, so nothing too surprising here. You guys are probably familiar with this movement. Very popular, very common. We're coming in at about plus 9 or 10 seconds a day. Not too bad. Very good amplitude, very good beat error, and running strong. Okay guys, final thoughts on this watch. Great value for the money, $189 for something like this. There are some things I would change on it aesthetically speaking, but in terms of specs, it really knocks it out of the park. It's got everything a watch enthusiast would look for. I mean, sapphire crystal, very capable Seiko movement, 100 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown on a dress watch. That's pretty cool. It's very interesting to see what they're accomplishing over there. So yes, this watch does lean more into the homage territory with its strong vintage Seiko vibes, and that's understandably going to turn some people off. But if you don't really care about that, this does represent a lot of value for the money. Okay guys, thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next time for another 10-minute watch review.